When a neighbor found Tommy Kirk's body, his friend Peter Peterson broke the sad news to the public. But that wasn't all. In his post, Peterson also shared the most tragic detail about the actor's private life. The success of child star Tommy Kirk made a fortune for Disney, and then he simply disappeared. What happened to him? And what made him leave the entertainment world behind? As a boy, Tommy Kirk quickly became a family favorite in some of Disney's most treasured films. But Kirk's abrupt departure from Disney left his fans feeling confused. The thing was, Kirk had a secret, and when Disney found out, they wanted nothing to do with him. Tommy Kirk was born on December 10th, 1941 in Louisville, Kentucky. He grew up with 3 brothers, but sadly his parents had trouble putting food on the table. They decided that a move was in order, to somewhere with promising work opportunities. So the Kirks moved west to California. Little did they know what a huge impact this move would have on their lives. Kirk's older brother Joe had somehow caught the acting bug, and he dragged his little brother Tommy to an audition at the Pasadena Playhouse. Sadly, Joe didn't get the part he wanted, but something unexpected happened. Even though it was Joe who wanted to act, it was Tommy who got the part. This seemingly random incident would change Kirk's life forever. Kirk's part at the Pasadena Playhouse was only a handful of lines and paid exactly $0, but there was an agent in the audience one night, and Kirk impressed him. The agent represented the Gertz agency, and they quickly signed Kirk on. Before he knew it, Kirk was off the stage and on to much more lucrative media. Kirk's first role away from live theater was on a TV Reader's Digest episode called The Last of the Old-Time Shooting Sheriffs. While his brother had to consider other career options, he eventually became a dentist, Kirk was on a path to stardom. It didn't take long for the folks at Disney to notice Kirk, and they came calling. The Mickey Mouse Club was only a year old when Kirk got the call to appear in their series based on the popular Hardy Boys books. Kirk got the role of Joe Hardy, and the show was an immediate hit with audiences. Kirk was quickly getting tight with the folks at Disney, and they had big plans for their new little star. The thing about Kirk was that he was the rare child actor who could cry on cue. Disney saw the potential of this and cast him in Old Yeller. At the end of this dramatic feature, Kirk's character has to shoot his beloved dog because it has rabies. It was bad enough that the dog had to go, but it was Kirk's performance that made cinematic history. No one knew then, but this scene would become a pop culture phenomenon. The scene where Kirk's character has to end the life of his dog Yeller is utterly brutal. In fact, many adults say that watching it is up there with the worst moments in their lives. Bill Murray's character in Stripes references it.
Who saw Old Yeller?
And there's even an episode of Friends where the jaded New Yorkers watch the scene and recoil in horror.
No, the end!
Despite all the drama, or because of it, Old Yeller was about to take Kirk to the next level. Old Yeller ended up being number 5 on the list of highest grossing films of 1957. Of course, this made Disney very happy. Kirk remembers being in a hotel in Beverly Hills and running into Walt Disney himself. Kirk beamed with pride as Disney told his companion that Kirk was his good luck piece. And then something happened that left Kirk out in the cold. Kirk later said that while working for Walt Disney Studios, he went through a difficult stage. The difficulty? His appearance. He'd become too thin and bony. Although they didn't come out and say it, Disney wasn't about to hire someone who looked so unhealthy. And that's when a role appeared that he'd be perfect for. In 1960, Walt Disney Studios was planning for a huge feature film, and being a little too thin was perfect. The film, Swiss Family Robinson, about a family who finds themselves shipwrecked on a desert island. The filmmakers needed to find an unspoiled tropical island, and they quickly discovered Tobago. Being in Tobago meant being away from home. Kirk immediately felt lost. While shooting Swiss Family Robinson in Tobago, Kirk got so homesick that he wanted to quit and go home. But surprisingly, it wasn't his family that Kirk missed. He was actually homesick for the nightlife in California. Despite that, he stayed and finished the film. But why didn't he long to see his family again? At first glance, it seems that Hollywood was his family. Kirk had certainly played Fred MacMurray's son enough times. In 1962, they were back together in Bon Voyage, and Kirk was starting to see MacMurray as his real father. Sadly, MacMurray had no intention of filling in the shoes of Kirk's absent parent. When Kirk started acting out, a very unfatherly MacMurray took the young actor aside. It was not a warm or cozy moment. MacMurray, who was also on TV as the oh-so-patient father on My Three Sons, had it with Kirk. Instead of a friendly father-son chat, MacMurray gave what Kirk later called the biggest dressing down of his lifetime. If Kirk thought he could turn to his on-screen mom for support, he was sadly mistaken. In Bon Voyage, Jane Wyman played Kirk's mother. Kirk said that she was very mean to him on the set. Maybe she was angry because she was an Academy Award-winning actress and now she'd been reduced to playing someone's mom. But no, Kirk was sure he knew why she wasn't nice to him, and it was for a shocking reason. By the time he was making Bon Voyage, Kirk had come to terms with the fact that he was gay. He also suspected that Wyman knew as well, and for this reason, she treated him horribly. Kirk was in a difficult situation. If he couldn't keep Disney happy, they'd surely fire him. In 1962, Disney sent Kirk to Europe to make Escapade in Florence. Here, they paired him with Annette Funicello, and newspapers started suggesting the two were more than just co-stars. Obviously, this wasn't the truth, but it must have made Disney happy. It meant that Kirk's secret would remain just that. Kirk was walking on thin ice, and he could slip through at any moment. Gay or not, Disney still had high hopes for Kirk. They decided it was time to do a sequel of the movie that made him famous. Old Yeller had been such a hit that Savage Sam seemed destined to do the same. Kirk was back with his on-screen brother, Kevin Corcoran, but there seemed to be something missing. Before filming started, a disaster had already placed a heavy cloud over this film. Fred Gibson wrote the screenplay for Savage Sam based on his own book. He even had a dog that had inspired him to write the story. Before the film came out, Gibson's son discovered the dog's lifeless body. It had been repeatedly clubbed. To make matters much, much worse, Gibson's son then took his own life. With this horrible situation as a backdrop, Kirk had to try and make Savage Sam as big a hit as Old Yeller was. There was no way that Savage Sam would ever amount to the success of Old Yeller. Neither critics nor audiences seemed to like Savage Sam, and one pundit even called it a dogged, listless effort. Disney had finally witnessed Kirk failing to elevate a film, and Savage Sam became his strike one. Sadly, strike two would be an even bigger disaster. Kirk was filming The Misadventures of Merlin Jones, once again with Funicello, and he got into some misadventures of his own. It turns out that Kirk had a boyfriend who was just 15 years old. Eventually, someone caught the two showing affection at a public swimming pool. When the 15-year-old mother found out, she got on the phone with the people at Disney, and Kirk was in serious trouble. You can imagine that the rumor mill was on fire with the news of Kirk's relationship with a 15-year-old boy. Kirk later said that people at the studio were certainly and suddenly less friendly toward him. Eventually, Kirk got some news that would make him stop cold in his tracks. It was Walt Disney himself who ended Kirk's contract, but it wasn't just for the episode at the pool with the 15-year-old. Kirk later admitted that his strike three was being high all the time at that time in his life. He later referred to this moment as the end of my fairy tale. It was no surprise that Disney ended their relationship, but what Disney did next must have knocked Kirk's socks off. One thing that Disney didn't count on was the misadventures of Merlin Jones becoming a huge hit. Critics easily saw the film for what it was, a 2-hour TV show stitched together to make a feature. Audiences didn't care. They liked Kirk, and they liked this picture. Walt Disney, who famously hated sequels, loved money enough to do one. But there was a problem. He'd already fired Kirk. One of Kirk's talents was his ability to turn even low-budget movies into big moneymakers. The Monkey's Uncle was no exception, and it became another box office bonanza for Disney. But all the money in the world couldn't make the studio accept Kirk for who he was. Kirk's time with Disney was over, and he needed to find something else. Disney didn't exactly announce that they had fired Kirk, but it didn't matter. The truth was that Kirk was out of a job. He turned to American International Pictures and met up with his old friend Funicello. The studio was making a teen film called Pajama Party, and Kirk happily got on board. Little did he know, but this film would set him on a course for bikini adventures. Around this time, Americans had a thirst for beach party films, and Kirk seemed destined to appear in almost all of them. There was The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini, It's a Bikini World, and Catalina Caper. Like his work with Disney, Kirk was drawing audiences to films and making the studio a ton of money. All he had to do was stay out of trouble. Apparently, this was not possible. In 1964, Kirk went to a party to celebrate Christmas, but for some reason, officers arrived and found that Kirk was in possession of marijuana. This was already a big deal, but then things got worse. When the officers searched Kirk's car, they found sedatives. This certainly wasn't the behavior of an all-American boy. Kirk had some explaining to do. The district attorney's office dropped the marijuana possession charges against Kirk, but there were still the sedatives found in his car. As Kirk's lawyer pointed out, these pills were from a prescription from Kirk's doctor. This was good news for Kirk, but not really. Dropped charges or not, Kirk had tarnished his reputation, and the fallout was immediate. Before his altercation at the Christmas party, Kirk had 3 films on the go. Sadly, they replaced him in all 3 films: Wild Bikini, Beach Ball, and The Sons of Katie Elder. This last loss really hurt. This was going to be a film that got Kirk out of the beach party films and into something more serious. It starred John Wayne, and it could have relaunched Kirk's career. Kirk had to make money somehow, so he did whatever he could. Kirk's manager didn't care what Kirk did as long as he made money, so more forgettable films followed. The thing was, Kirk could have taken this time to reevaluate his career and maybe take it in another direction. But Kirk didn't do that, and soon his bad decisions had a fatal effect on his career. In the early 70s, Kirk was desperate for work, and he accepted a role in the low-budget Blood of Ghastly Horror. The problem with this film was that it was not a part of the Screen Actors Guild. This made Kirk lose his SAG membership. Now, producers would not be able to hire Kirk for union films. Kirk knew he had made a bad decision, and so he looked for any way to deal with it. Because he was unable to work for most film productions, Kirk became depressed. He already had a drug habit, and at this point, it shifted into being full-blown abuse. On one harrowing occasion, he came close to overdosing. With no work in show business, Kirk had to do something, anything, to make money. By 1973, Kirk's phone was not ringing with offers for films. It got so bad that he had to take a job as a waiter. He was taking acting classes at the Lee Strasberg Theater, but still, nothing was coming his way. He even worked as a chauffeur, likely driving around folks who didn't even recognize him from Old Yeller. Kirk had hit rock bottom. When he'd sunk as low as he could, he decided it was time to come clean. In 1973, he came out to the world in an interview with John Marvin. This was a time when most Hollywood celebrities weren't open about being gay. Some still aren't. Well, back in 1973, coming out could equal the end of your career. Kirk said goodbye to Hollywood. When Kirk came out, the film roles completely dried up. So next, Kirk got into musical theater. He headed back to Kentucky and appeared in Hello Dolly and Little Mary Sunshine. Eventually, film offers started coming back, but they were not the family-friendly movies he'd made in the past, not even a little bit. In 1988, Kirk appeared in Streets of Death, which is a particularly nasty film about two men making snuff films. Kirk is the only professional actor in the cast, and it showed. Kirk later called the film a case of good intentions. Kirk's career was flatlining, and nothing seemed capable of reviving it. As the world turned over to a new millennium, Kirk continued appearing in some very forgettable films. If titles like Billy Frankenstein or The Education of a Vampire don't ring any bells, there's a reason. These were not wide-release films, and Kirk was scraping the bottom of the barrel just to stay in show business. This kind of work would make anyone bitter about making movies, but Kirk was not like other people. Despite all this work, in 1990, Kirk announced that he was poor. He did have a good attitude, though. He opened up a carpet cleaning company and proudly called it Tommy Kirk's Carpet and Upholstery. He said he wasn't bitter and he had no regrets. I'd guess he planned to quietly live out his remaining years. And in 2006, Disney seemed to forget that they had parted ways with Kirk. They decided to induct him as a Disney legend. At his side were co-stars like Tim Considine and Kevin Corcoran, who had been Kirk's brothers on screen. You may think that receiving this honor was bittersweet for Kirk, but his response was a huge surprise. Disney recounted what Kirk said when he received his legend status. Apparently, he said that it was his Disney work that he wanted fans to remember. He mentioned two movies, Swiss Family Robinson and Old Yeller, as the ones he wanted fans to think about when they thought about Tommy Kirk. Again, Kirk returned to his quiet life, only to find out that people still cared. In 2017, a 76-year-old Kirk found out that there were still fans out there who wanted to know about him. So he went on a radio program and stunned listeners by announcing that he wasn't gay, he was bi. He said he has had relationships with both women as well as men. But only 4 years after that interview, Kirk was gone. On September 28, 2021, a neighbor found Kirk's lifeless body in his Las Vegas apartment. He was 79 years old. When Kirk's longtime friend and fellow child star, Paul Peterson, learned of this sad news, he shared it with Kirk's fans through social media. Please know that Tommy Kirk loved you, his fans. However, there was another major revelation in Paul Peterson's post. When Peterson announced Kirk's passing, he also shared a sad secret about the late actor's family. The truth was that Kirk had had no contact with his family, and the reason was tragic. Kirk's family had disowned him, likely because of his choice of relationships. This could be why Kirk had clung so tightly to his on-screen families. As it turned out, he did find a family in the end. Kevin Corcoran was his on-screen brother in more than one film, and he remembered Kirk as a monster talent. He also said that he had given Kirk a hard time over their careers together. Corcoran said that Kirk should have despised him, but that Kirk hadn't hated him at all. It sounds like a typical brother relationship to me. However, there was one more person from Old Yeller who also became like family. Back in 1994, Kirk had gone to a convention where he met up with Beverly Washburn, who had played his neighbor in Old Yeller. It had been years since the two had seen each other, and a new friendship began. It's not surprising, and it's kind of touching, that Kirk had found a sort of family through his most popular film. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want a say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.